It's strange how memories never really leave you. Some fade, some lose their sharpness, but others, they stay like fresh wounds, even after years. For me, the wound was 20 years old, and it was carved by two people I trusted more than anyone else in the world, my best friend and my wife. Back then, I was in my 20s. I had the kind of energy and hope you can only have when you're young and still building your future. Life wasn't perfect, but I felt like it was on the right track. I had just landed a steady job, I was saving money, and I had a wife who I thought was my partner for life. And my best friend? He was like a brother to me. We had grown up together, gone through good and bad times, shared secrets, shared laughs. You know how they say some friendships feel like family. That was us. I remember nights when the three of us would hang out together. We would sit around eating cheap takeout, laughing about stupid things, making plans for the future. I thought I had everything. But sometimes what feels like everything is actually just a house built on sand, waiting for the tide to come in and wash it all away. I didn't see the warning signs, or maybe I didn't want to. I trusted them both so much that the idea of betrayal never even crossed my mind. Looking back, there were little things, moments when I'd noticed the two of them exchange a glance that felt different, times when my wife would defend him a little too quickly if I joked about him, or how he seemed to always show up when she was home alone. But I brushed it all off, because that's what you do when you think love and loyalty are unshakable. You dismiss the things that make your stomach twist. Then came the night when everything shattered. It was late. I came home earlier than usual from work, excited to surprise my wife. I had picked up flowers and her favorite dessert. My plan was simple, a small, intimate dinner at home, just us. I walked in quietly, not wanting to ruin the surprise. But as I stepped into the living room, I froze. The scene that unfolded in front of me didn't just hurt, it destroyed me. There they were, my wife and my best friend, together, in a way that left no room for misunderstanding. I can't even put into words what that moment felt like. Imagine your heart being ripped out, stomped on, and then shoved back into your chest, still beating, but broken beyond repair. I dropped the flowers. The sound startled them, and when they saw me standing there, their faces turned pale. My wife tried to speak, her voice trembling, but I couldn't hear her. My ears were ringing, my vision blurry. My so-called best friend, he didn't even look sorry. He just looked caught. I walked out. I didn't scream, didn't fight, didn't throw things. I didn't even cry. I just walked out of that house, leaving behind not just a marriage, but a life I thought I had. The next few months were a blur. Divorce papers, gossip from neighbors, whispers at work. Everyone seemed to know what happened. And the worst part? They didn't hide their relationship. Within weeks, my wife was with him publicly, like I had never even mattered. The betrayal burned deeper than anything I had ever experienced. People pitied me, and that pity felt like salt on the wound. Time went on, though. Life has a way of moving forward even when you don't want it to. I moved cities, focused on work, tried to rebuild. But no matter how much I tried, that scar was always there. 20 years passed, I remarried eventually, built a different life, found stability. But the memory of what they did never left me. It was like a shadow that followed me everywhere. And then, life gave me an unexpected chance. One random day, I got an invitation, a reunion of sorts, from old acquaintances in the town where I used to live. At first, I thought of ignoring it. Why dig up old ghosts? But something inside me said, go. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fate. But I packed a bag and drove back to the place I had once called home. Walking into that hall was surreal. Familiar faces, older now, but still recognizable. People smiled, shook my hand, asked how I'd been. And then across the room, I saw them, my ex-wife and my former best friend. They were older too, of course. Time hadn't been kind to them. He looked worn out, tired, like the weight of life had pressed down hard on him. And her. She didn't have the same glow she used to. They were together still, though. That much was clear. But the way they carried themselves, it wasn't happiness. It was routine, resentment, maybe even regret. Our eyes met, and for a moment it was like 20 years hadn't passed. I could see the flicker of recognition, the guilt in her eyes, and something else in his, something like shame. Or maybe fear, I didn't approach them right away. I mingled, talked to others, kept my composure. But inside, the storm was raging. All those buried emotions started bubbling back up. And then I realized this was my moment, my chance. Not for yelling or fighting or creating a scene, but for something much colder, something that would leave them speechless, and everyone else too. The kind of revenge that doesn't just hurt, it lingers. And that's when I set my plan in motion. I don't think anyone in that room expected me to walk over to them. After all, why would I? 20 years had passed. Most people assumed I'd moved on, buried the past, and forgotten about them. But the truth was I hadn't forgotten. You don't forget the kind of betrayal that reshapes your entire life. I stood there for a few minutes, watching them from across the room. They weren't holding hands, weren't laughing, weren't sharing that spark I remembered seeing back when they betrayed me. Instead, they looked like two people who had been stuck with each other for far too long, bound not by love, but by the consequences of their choices. Finally, I walked over. Their eyes widened as I approached. My ex-wife shifted uncomfortably, trying to force a polite smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. My old friend, well, let's just call him the man who ruined everything, he tried to act confident, but I could see right through it. His shoulders tensed, his jaw clenched. "Long time," I said, my voice calm. They both nodded, fumbling for words. "Yes, it's been years," she replied. I didn't give them much of a chance to speak. I simply smiled, looked them in the eye, and said, "I see you two are still together." There was silence, a silence heavy enough that people nearby started glancing over, sensing the tension. My ex-best friend, cleared his throat. "Yes, we are," he muttered, almost offensively. I just nodded, letting the weight of my gaze sit on them. I didn't need to say much. My presence alone was unsettling them. And that's when I realized something important. Revenge didn't have to be loud. It didn't have to be a scene in front of everyone. The real power was in being calm, collected, and letting them see that I wasn't broken anymore. But my plan went beyond that. You see, while they had stayed in the same place all these years, I had moved forward. I had built something. My career had grown, my investments had paid off, and while life had its ups and downs, I had done well, more than well. And nothing screamed revenge louder than success. The reunion had a dinner planned. Tables were set, people were seated, and conversations filled the room. I made sure I was seated at a table just a few spots away from them, where they could see me but not avoid me. And as the evening went on, I casually shared stories with the people around me. Stories of the business I had built, the travels I had taken, the life I now lived. I wasn't bragging, I was simply answering questions. But I made sure my answers were polished, confident, and laced with enough detail to paint the picture of a man who had risen above the ashes. And they were listening. Oh, I could feel it. Every time I spoke, I caught them stealing glances, their faces betraying a mix of discomfort and regret. My ex-wife shifted in her chair more than once. My former friend avoided eye contact. It was as if each word I spoke reminded them of the choices they had made, and what those choices had cost them. At one point, someone at the table asked me about my family, and I told them with a smile about my second marriage, about my children, about the home I had built with love and stability. I made sure to emphasize the word love. I saw her flinch at that, because deep down, she knew she had thrown away someone who truly loved her for something that didn't last. But this was only the beginning. Later in the evening, there was an open mic moment, people sharing stories, catching up, even cracking jokes. When it was my turn, I stood up, not for long, just enough to say a few words. I thanked the organizers, said it was great to see old faces, and then added, "It's funny how life works. Sometimes the people you trust most end up teaching you the hardest lessons, but those lessons shape who you become. And I, for one, am grateful for every lesson, because without them, I wouldn't be standing where I am today." The room clapped politely. But the words weren't for them. They were for the two people sitting a few tables away, looking like they wanted to disappear. After the dinner, people mingled again, and here's where the second part of my plan unfolded. I had come prepared not with anger, not with confrontation, but with something far more devastating, proof. You see, over the years I had kept tabs, not obsessively, but enough to know that their life hadn't been perfect. He had made some questionable business choices. They had financial struggles. And recently, I had discovered something interesting through a mutual contact. His company was on the brink of collapse. Debts, lawsuits, shady deals. He wasn't the successful man he wanted people to think he was. So when I approached him later, one-on-one, I didn't yell or threaten. I simply looked him in the eye and said, "You know, karma has a way of circling back. I hear your business isn't doing so well. Shame. You always wanted to be on top." His face turned pale. He stammered, trying to deny it, but the sweat on his forehead told the truth. I leaned in slightly and whispered, "You took 20 years of peace from me. But now, I'll be the reminder of everything you lost. Every time you see me, you'll know you chose wrong. And the best part? I don't even have to lift a finger. Life already punished you." He didn't reply. He couldn't. He just stood there, frozen. As I walked away, I passed by my ex-wife. She looked at me with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, regret, maybe even longing. But whatever it wasn't happiness. And that was enough for me. The night ended with me leaving quietly, no drama, no scenes. But the silence I left behind screamed louder than anything else, and yet, that wasn't the end. Because fate had one more twist waiting. The drive back to my hotel that night was quiet. But inside, my thoughts were louder than ever. For years, I had imagined what I'd say or do if I ever saw them again. Sometimes I pictured yelling, sometimes punching him, sometimes exposing them in front of everyone. But what I actually did, just a few calm words, a few subtle truths that had shaken them more than any outburst could have. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. My presence alone had unsettled them, but I wanted more. Not for me, but for the younger version of myself who had walked out of his own home 20 years ago, broken and humiliated. That man deserved closure. The next morning, fate gave me exactly that. As I was checking out of the hotel, I ran into her, my ex-wife. She was alone, standing in the lobby, as if she had been waiting. When she saw me, she hesitated for a moment, then walked over. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I considered walking away. Part of me wanted to, but another part, the part that wanted answers, nodded. "Sure," I said. We sat in the corner of the lobby. She looked older now, lines on her face that weren't just from age, but from years of stress and regret. She tried to hold my gaze, but her eyes kept dropping. I wanted to say I'm sorry," she began. Her voice cracked. What we did, it was wrong. I've lived with that guilt for years. And honestly, life hasn't been what I thought it would be. He's not the man I thought he was. We fight, we struggle. Sometimes I wonder if it was all worth it. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered the image of them together, laughing at my expense, flaunting their betrayal like I had never mattered. The pity evaporated. "You made your choice," I said calmly. "You both did. And whatever life gave you after, that's not my problem," she nodded, tears in her eyes. "I know, I wanted you to know I regret it. If I could go back, I'd cut her off. If you could go back, you'd probably still do the same thing. Because back then you wanted excitement. You wanted someone else. You thought the grass was greener, and now you're realizing it wasn't." Her silence was the answer. I stood up, ready to leave, but then she whispered, "Do you ever think about what could have been if things had been different?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and then I gave her the coldest truth I could. No, because I know what could have been, and I also know what I have now. A wife who loves me, kids who respect me, a life that's honest. And none of that would have been possible with you. Her face fell. She didn't try to stop me as I walked away. That was the closure I didn't even know I needed, but life wasn't done yet. Later that evening, I went out to grab dinner before heading home. The town was small enough that running into people was easy. And sure enough, as I parked my car, I saw him, my ex-best friend, standing outside a bar, looking stressed and talking on the phone. He didn't see me at first, but when he hung up and turned, his eyes locked onto mine. He froze. Then slowly, he walked over. "Listen," he said quietly, his tone different now, stripped of pride. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I just want you to know things haven't been easy for me. Business went bad, debts piled up. Honestly, I'm barely hanging on. Sometimes I wonder if maybe I'm paying for what I did to you." I studied him. This man had once been full of arrogance, so sure of himself, so sure he could take whatever he wanted. And now he was broken. Life had already punished him more than I ever could. You know, I said finally, people always talk about karma like it's some myth. But looking at you now, I don't think I need to believe in karma. I can see it. He swallowed hard, unable to respond. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. The same envelope I had been carrying since before the reunion. I handed it to him. He looked at me, confused. "What's this?" "Open it," I said. With shaky hands, he tore it open. Inside were copies of documents I had obtained through that mutual contact, proof of his debts, his lawsuits, the crumbling state of his business. Things that, if shared publicly, could ruin what little reputation he still had left. His face went white. How did you—" I cut him off. "I don't need to use it. I don't even want to. But I want you to know that I could. At any moment I could take away what's left of your life. The way you once took away mine." He stood there speechless, holding the papers like they were burning his hands. His mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time in 20 years, he had nothing to say. I leaned in, my voice calm but firm. "The difference between you and me is this. I won't, because unlike you, I don't need to destroy others to feel powerful. Just knowing that I could is enough." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, trembling, clutching the envelope. That moment, that silence, that was my revenge. Not yelling, not violence, not public humiliation. Just a reminder that his actions had consequences, and that no matter how far he ran, he could never escape them. And the best part? I didn't need to ruin him. He was already ruined. I just made sure he knew it. 20 years ago, he had stolen my wife and my peace. But now I had something he could never touch, real love, real success, and peace within myself. And that's what left him, and everyone else who knew the story, completely speechless.